Fighting and preventing corruption are the major issues that all governments have to deal with, no matter how much a country is developed. Corruption can hinder economic growth and cause harm to the society. Citizens will lose their trust and faith in their government. As destructive effects can be brought by corruption, many countries are trying to fight against it. A lot of countries have already developed a comprehensive set of regulations to prevent corruption. Singapore is one of the cleanest countries in the world. According to the Corruption Perception Index in 2016, Singapore has a total score of 84 and the government is the 7th cleanest in the globe. Moreover, the latest Bright Payer Index of Singapore is 8.3 out of 10, implying that Singapore companies are less likely to bribe when they are operating abroad. From the above statistics, it is clear that Singapore controls and prevents corruption effectively. Let's focus on the anti-corruption strategies adopted by Singapore and make a comparison on anti-corruption measures between China and Singapore. Maybe we can start with how Singapore government suppresses the incentive of corruption through establishing an excellent remuneration and welfare structure in public sector. One very effective anti-corruption measure in Singapore is the high pay of salaries and retirement pension for government officials. According to Emolument, a crowdsourced salary comparison website, the average salaries of government officials in Singapore is 59,000 Singapore dollars per year, while average salaries of all employees in Singapore is 54,000 Singapore dollars per year. The data shows that Singapore's government officials are paid at a relatively higher level. In addition, extra subsidy for Central Provident Fund (CPF) provided to public servants is also successful in increasing the cost of corruption. So, what is CPF? CPF is a system which offers a considerable amount of money to CPF members when they reach their retirement age. In Singapore, 40% of the monthly income of an employee will be contributed to the CPF, and the contribution is shared by both employees and employers. In the public sector, there is extra subsidy provided by the governments to CPF of public servants, and the amounts will increase with the length of service time. Therefore, public servants can attain a munificent amount of pensions, which is around 850,000 Singapore dollars, which equals to 4.8 million Hong Kong dollars, when they retired from senior positions. Due to the fact that both the high pay of salaries and CPF funds will be expropriated if the public servants engage in corruption, the remuneration and welfare system discourage public servants to corrupt to a large extent. What's more, imposing heavy punishment towards corrupt public officials, regardless of senior positions, in another way to curb corruption. In Singapore, Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau is a leading anti-corruption agency and the chief anti-corruption watchdog. CPIB is independent of its action and possesses additional authorities to back up its action. It directly reports to the Prime Minister, and this ensures that no intervention from the third party will add towards the investigation and operation of CPIB actions. If there is a refusal to give the green light to its investigation activities from the Prime Minister, CPIB could seek help from the President, under provisions of the National Constitution which stipulates that the President could intervene to make CPIB's investigation proceed. The supreme independence also reflects that the operation of CPIB would not favor or fear any individuals, departments or other institutions, regardless of social status, power and creed. In the past 30 years, CPIB has carried out investigation and conducted accusation towards senior Singapore officials, including Te Jiang Wan, who was the Minister of National Development and a close comrade of the former President Lee Kuan Yew, and Wee Tu Boon, who was the Minister of Ministry of the Environment, also Kun Hee Huan, a magistrate. These corrupted officials end up going to the jail from 3 to 5 years, and these famous cases demonstrate that there is no discrimination in accusation of corruption against every corrupt official. Hence, officials are afraid of committing corruption due to the high possibility of being accused and hefty penalty. Another strategy to tackle corruption in Singapore is to stifle all opportunities of corruption through strictly monitor the behaviors of public servants. Under the Sunshine Law, one of the stringent regulations regarding anti-corruption is that bureaucracies and their spouses and dependent children in Singapore are required to declare their assets at specific dates yearly. The assets include interest or investment in private or public companies, lands and houses. When an abnormal increase in their assets is identified, there will be further investigation carried out. In addition to governmental supervision, the public also plays a vital role in supervising the public officials. Because of good education concerning corruption and anti-corruption provided in Singapore, the public has more explicit understandings and lower tolerance towards corruption. Under this line of thinking, both the supervision from governments and the public make no room for public officials to conduct corrupting behaviors. To conclude, owing to the combined efforts of excellent remuneration and welfare structure, non-disciplinary punishment towards corrupt officials and strict supervision from governments and the public officials in Singapore are not able to corrupt, not dare to corrupt, and don't want to corrupt. Hence, Singapore becomes one of the cleanest countries in the world. Next, let us look into the differences in level of corruption between China and Singapore. According to Transparency International, the Corruption Perception Index of Singapore ranked number 7 in the world with a score of 84 in 2016, and could be considered as a relatively clean country. While for China, the score is only 40 and is only ranked at number 79 globally. The gap of cleanliness and probity between the countries is quite significant. It is undoubted that Singapore did a more fabulous job than that of China in anti-corruption field. But why is there a huge difference, and what leads to this gap in corruption level? To start with, let's compare the anti-corruption enforcement institutions in the two nations, which are Corrupt Practice Investigation Bureau (CPIB) in Singapore and Central Discipline Inspection Commission (CDIC) in China. CPIB is independent of additional authority backing up its actions, while CDIC does not. As mentioned above, CPIB is an independent entity under Prime Minister's office, and it just needs to report to Prime Minister without any intervention from the third party. It ensures its smoothness and secret investigation will not be interrupted. Impartiality and neutrality enable CPIB fight against corruption and turn Singapore into a country with integrity. For CDIC, it monitors the behaviors and gives punishment for any improper behaviors made by party members. However, the Chinese Communist Party plays a dominant role in the affairs of CDIC, making it unable to exercise autonomy in the supervision of CCP members. If the case is related to Vice Minister or Deputy Governor or higher, the investigation must be approved by the Standing Committee, which means it may be prohibited. Besides, there is a gap between the effectiveness of CPIB and CDIC. The PCA provides CPIB with several rights. They can arrest the convicted officials without arrest warrants and investigate their bank accounts, share accounts, and other financial records, as well as their family members. It facilitates the investigation procedure and speeds up the conviction process. However, it is complicated for CDIC to handle the case as it includes 8 steps, which are preliminary evidence, preliminary confirmation, approval for opening the case, evidence collection, case hearing, disciplinary sections, appeal by officials, continued supervision of the case. These procedures are lengthy and complex, which greatly reduces the speed and efficiency of CDIC. It shows that the anti-corruption enforcement institution in Singapore is more effective and fair than China. Next, here is a comparison between Singapore's judicial system and China's judicial system. Under Singapore's judicial system, the President needs to seek advice from the Prime Minister and the Council of Presidential Advisors to appoint Chief Justice. Also, President takes advice from the Chief Justice to appoint district judges. They are not allowed to adjudicate when being influenced by personal interests, so they will not be easily manipulated by guanxi practice and bribery. However, corruption caused by political intervention is a deep-rooted problem in regional courts in China. Local governments and local People's Congress members often utilize their power to manipulate the adjudication in local courts. Besides, the party grants power to the Ministry of Public Security and the Ministry of State Security to control the criminal procedures more than that of the Ministry of Justice. Therefore, when party members are suspected and investigated for the involvement in bribery, they can easily manipulate the investigation process and adjudication. It shows that China's legal system can hardly deter corruption. To sum up, by investigating and comparing the anti-corruption institutions and judicial system of Singapore and China, it is found that there is a range of limiting factors hindering China to establish the clean government. For instance, the political will is not strong enough in China, and thus this may debilitate the effects of the anti-corruption campaign. All in all, the Chinese government needs to put more efforts to combat and curb corruption in China. Although making considerable changes in the judicial system in China is not feasible, there are still ways to cope with corruption. It is advised that China can start with allowing higher legal empowerments to the CDIC to reduce its restraints and shorten its lengthy process in the investigation of corruption cases. Other than making investigation and charges towards corrupt officials, CDIC can conduct community education to educate the public about harmful effects brought by corruption and enhance their awareness towards corruption. In this way, the public can be invited to supervise the behaviors of officials, making China on the road to a cleaner country.